Hello from Yesterday's Stash. My name's Emily, and today I'd like to show you the latest book that I have just completed. It's a Jane Austen book. I'm an Anglophile. I love Jane Austen, and I love all things Jane. And this book I made, basically, there's so many themes that you can have with Jane's books. You can go with this one is about books, but also she wrote poems. She also played the piano. She loved gardens and flowers, and she loved to write plays. She was into fashion. She wrote a lot about fashion in her books. So she sewed. She did needlework, and then her books were written during mostly the Edwardian period of the history of England, although a little bit later it was the Regency, because after she had written for a while, I think she had to dedicate her book to the king that was filling in during the Edwardian period, during the Regency period, and she didn't like him. But anyway, Emma was the book, and she had to dedicate it to him because he asked for it, and that's the way it was. She also wrote a lot about relationships. She wrote about people, and she did a whole lot of thinking thoughts that her characters in her books went through. So a lot of character development, that kind of thing. So anyway, this one is focusing on books, and this was a quote out of the Pride and Prejudice book that she wrote that talks about that there is no enjoyment like reading. How much sooner one tries. Let's see, what does this say? It says, "When I have a house of my own, I shall be miserable if I've not an excellent library." And that was what she wrote about books. Now, what I used for this, the outside, is a tissue paper that has books in it. I'm going to take this off. This is what the tissue paper looks like. And here it is. It's a Marcel Sherman. And I'm going to be including some of this in with it because there is so much that can be done with books. You can make tags out of them. All sorts of things can be done if you wanted to ever have a book theme. And that's what I decided to do, was to make a Jane Austen book using and sort of the color is more of a brick, or brick. There's also blue in here. An orangish tannish and a little bit of pink, but I chose to go with and what I had was a brick color. And so this is also gro-grain ribbon that I wrapped it around in. But on the side here, I experimented with a piece of fabric, and I used I experimented with a piece of lace. And if you uncover this, you can see where I sewed strips of this lace onto some kind of white on white fabric, and I did the whole pleated look. And then I added some Mod Podge, the gold, and I just love this. I cannot the background of the colors in the tissue paper are gold, and so I put a little bit of glitter anywhere that I could in here, and so I added that, as well as I have lots of different laces. One of the things that I thought I would do would be, at first I wanted to cover the book with a piece of the lace fabric, but then I found this, so I'm going to include both of these in here, and whoever wants this book can decide whether they want which one they want to use. So this has got like a two-way insert or pocket. So I have included a lot of things. Here's a picture of Jane using some of that fabric, and a little bit of information about her and how she sewed hats and ribbons, and she wrote a lot of letters to her sister Cassandra. And so I've got some tags in here of things that she said. And then, of course, can't have a book on books without a bookmark or two. So that's what's going to go in here. So the book itself is 8 by 6 by 3. It's a pliable book. What I use is Craftex. Craftex looks like this. You buy it in a roll, and it's very kind of it's not it's just really good to use in binding books, and it's heavy and thick, but also you can stick a needle through it without a problem. So what I did was I have the Craftex, and then I put this cloth on top that I also embellished with my Mod Podge, but also my color. What I used for distressing is aged mahogany. And so the aged mahogany, when I painted the fabric, it kind of turned that color. And so, but anyway, the Craftex, this fabric on top of which this is Aida cloth, and Aida cloth also has pliability to it. And then on top of that, I have the fabric that I did the sewing of this on, and I used E6000 to attach this and glue this down. So that's what the bind or the spine looks like. And then there's lace all the way around. And then I also went ahead and adorned some pages with gold. And this is where I took Rub and Buff and did made a little by rubbing Rub and Buff on it, and I made just a little that has books in it. So since the book is about libraries and books, then this is one of those this book belongs to, which you can use. And then it's 3 signatures. But what I do is by using the Craftex and using 2 pretty sturdy fabrics, several layers of fabrics, the book has some pliability to it, but yet it will still open and let you work with it without popping. It still wants to pop just a little bit, but that's what that is. I also put a clear finish, Krylon clear finish, a fixative kind of on here, so that it kind of feels a little bit, it doesn't feel as thin. It gives the tissue paper some sturdiness. So the book has 40 pages, or 38 pages times 2, 76. It's 3 signatures. The first signature is 12 pages, the second is 14, and the third is 12. So that makes 76 if you take the front and the back and put them together. There are over 30 attached quotes or tags or bits of information that information about Jane and her life. And I love to sew. I probably sew every day on something, and I try to make my own tags and decorations, but I do use Etsy sellers digital kits, and I will have a list in the description box below of which ones I typically use. But because she sewed, she used to make shirts for her brothers, and this is on British fashion, and this is a kind of a conversation that she was having, that she had a knowledge of different fashions, not just in England, but in other places as well. And I use acetate right here if I don't want to cover a page that has a nice design on it. I don't want to cover it with a pocket that has then I use the acetate to keep it. So that is these are some tags that I got from an Etsy seller. Interesting piece of paper that I found here. It's a embroidered. It's machine embroidered, and because we are doing a book about Jane, and she didn't of course machine, because in the 1800s they didn't, or late 17, early 18, sewing machines weren't invented yet, but everything had to be sewn hand. But the embroidery on here reminds me of her. And then these are some postcards that I've collected from a company called Zazzle. So and then just using, this is K & Company's borders. Mistakes are proof that you are trying. So I thought that's kind of cute with sewing, because a lot of times we do make mistakes when we sew, and have to pull out our mistakes. This is lace dyed coffee paper, coffee stained lace paper, and I have probably over 30 or more places where you can jot down notes, or have places earmarked specifically for journaling on. Tried to have plenty of that. These are tags. This tag came from Zazzle. It's a postcard that I cut down. And then this is from I'm not sure where this is from, but it's from one of the Etsy sellers that I use. This is another, I just love the paper that this is from a digital seller. Here's earmarked specifically for journaling. This is from Tsunami Rose. This is also Tsunami Rose. This is about shoes. Jane wrote a letter to her niece and said that her mother had almost finished with making a pair of shoes, and we're not quite sure what that meant, but some shoes can be bought ready trimmed, and some shoes you can decorate or sew what color you want, or paint them, or whatever. So that's what we can assume. When she first started writing books, she couldn't put her name, because in those days you couldn't put your name if you were a female, and so she put that she put a lady, and this says a fine lady. I'm not quite sure exactly how but just a lady was one of the ways that she put who wrote the books, because she couldn't put in, like Georgia Eliot. She was another woman who was writing in this time, and she called herself George Eliot. And then it became where women could write and publish books, but during Jane Austen's day they couldn't. This is calendar pages. I have found some of the neatest, brightest, picturesque calendars at my thrift store, and they have just become so handy, because flowers were something that she enjoyed. This is a handmade flower, and we have here a card of a little girl bathing her doll in a bowl of water, and this is a little note tuck. This is some finished needlework, because that's one of the things that she did spend a lot of time on, and that women in those days did spend time on. More Tsunami Rose. This is where I took that beeswax and covered it. This is Pride and Prejudice, and just made a little tag out of that. More books. Tag that resembles something that she would have done in her life. Place for note-taking or for writing or for journaling. Music, since she was into music. I have a piece of music here. This is a tea bag, and I am using it as a pocket down here, right here. It's not going down very well. Okay, one at a time maybe. And this is also a couple of pockets. This is another bookmark. More of the tea or coffee dyed paper. This is an envelope with some tags in it. And then I found this journal, and it was called Jane Austen's Novel Journal. And in between the pages for journaling where she put the person who designed this book would have little quotes from Jane's books. And so I pulled them out, and then it had writing spaces on the back. So I pulled them out and used a couple of those in here, and this is one. And this is from Emma. That's a quote from Emma. This is another tag from a Etsy seller. I have lots of lace. This is a little rose on a bulb pin. I didn't put anything in this because I had two tags here that I glued down that had quotes. This is more writing space. This is another bulb pin that I took and put a piece of fabric on that kind of just sort of sits up here, that I didn't want to glue any center or anything to it, because I thought if you wanted to, you could take it off and use the fabric for something else. But here are a couple of more tags. That's the first signature. This is Brock. There was two brothers that used to draw, that drew pictures, illustrated her books. They didn't do it until maybe 50 years after she was born, after she was passed away. Because we didn't first start seeing these until her books were published in the late 1800s, and there was two brothers, and one is HM and one is CE, I think. But anyway, that's the example of the illustrations in her books of one of those brothers. This is where I took a piece of that hopsack cloth, and did a zigzag or a pleat on it, and this is what we would use to make tea towels or drying towels for your kitchen. This is some rice paper, more quotes. This is a little tag on a little charm of a I can't think of the name of that, but anyway, it's on a bulb pin. More gold wherever I could stick it. This is a little heart paper. This is more of that beautiful, I just thought it was so pretty, and I was able to find some blue that kind of coordinated with it. A picture is a poem without words. She lived for a period of time in Bath, so I took a couple of books that I had of good, sturdy, quality paper. I buy these books at thrift books for like $5, and they're really, they have good paper in them, and you can just take them out and use them. And this is a little bit about the city of Bath where she lived. It was after her father was a minister, and after he retired from Steventon, his son went in and took over, and so he moved into the rectory, and they moved and decided to move to Bath because I guess that was the place to go to have the springs and stay healthy and so forth and so on. It was on the water, so Jane did swim. She loved to go in the water, another bookmark. And then when I was in England myself, in London, I found this game, and I'm sure you can get it on, it's not in very good shape, but I'm sure you can get it online. But I found it at a bookstore, and it has all of the characters that were in Jane Austen's books. And so I stuck a couple of those in here. And this is a piece of a kit that wasn't finished, but I happened to find it at my thrift store, and it was all of these woven on a little weaver wove, and it was like 50 of them were woven like this, and they were partially put together. So I was able to take these individually and turn them into pockets or use them for different things. Reading can seriously damage your ignorance. It's a nice saying. This is another one of those Brock Brothers illustrations. This is really pretty. This was a digital kit, and I found the perfect buttons to complement them. And this I found at the thrift store. It was a kit that had been finished and never used for anything, and they would stick them in a bag and sell them for 50 cents or $1. This is an envelope from Old London by Artie Mays. Put that together, and then this is a quote by Jane Austen that I stuck in here. This is from a piece of, it almost feels like coffee maker, but it's a filter paper, and I was able to put that on a tag, and then I found a picture of a tree, and then this is a charm, and again I used that acrylic or acetate paper, transparency paper is what it's called. It's acetate, and I want to call it acrylic, but it's acetate. Pictures of pictures out of books about books. This is a quote from Sense and Sensibility, and that goes in there. This is the third and last, and this particular I had a 4-leaf clover here, and when I was gluing it, it chipped, so I have included another one in here that I will put with a paper clip on here that isn't chipped, that I used laminate and that's what I should have done with this. But here's another one of those from that journaling book. Write it down, crown, and then this is more of the quotes, and this is some fabric that I've kind of collaged together. This is where I used napkin to Mod Podge onto a page, and this has a couple of more tags. Total, there's probably over 20, 30, 40, 50 tags that you can pull out, and then there's also over 30 that are attached. And this is just information about one of the chapters that she was writing when she was writing Persuasion. Kind of an interesting story. I thought I would include that. This one says C.E. Brock, 1898. So that's another one of the brothers. This is a little, you can pull that off. Just so much fun to put these books together. Tea. There's a big teapot there. Another quote. This is a quote by Helen Keller. And sisters. I think this is Mrs. Cogg. Yeah, I think she has a sisters, but I'm not quite sure. Maybe on public domain. Mrs. Cogg Crafts. She's an Etsy seller. But sisters, her best friend for her life was Cassandra, her sister. They were 2 years apart. And when Jane was 8 and her sister was 10, they went off to school for a year, but then they got typhoid fever and had to come home. So she only really had a year training. But when she came home, she began to read voraciously using books from her father's library. So Jane and Her Books is sort of the name of this, and got a picture of her right here along with bookmark. Just great fun to make. This book will be for sale in my Etsy store called Yesterday's Stash. It's all one word, but the Y and the S are capitalized. If you go into Etsy, that's how it comes up, is that the Y and the S are capitalized, that the rest is not. And this book is going to be called Jane's Books, and just a great joy to make. I appreciate your coming along. I will be including some things with this. These are some things that I have pulled out. This is where you keep a record of the books that you read. And then she was also into music, and I didn't have room to include very much on her music. So I have just included, if you wanted to make some tags. And I will also be including some of the tissue paper with the book, because I think the book has I could have worked on it forever, but at some point you stop. So we'll talk again soon. Thanks for coming along.